My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone, like it was an email, not even a call, which felt somehow worse. From Jessica's lawyer. Again, my stomach just dropped. A cold, hard knot right in the pit of it, the kind that steals your breath. Regarding the amended parenting plan and your documented disturbances. Disturbances. That word, it just hung there, mocking me, like I was some kind of delinquent, not a dad trying to raise his kid. Leo was 6 years old, and now this whole ridiculous, soul-crushing mess that started with Mr. Henderson and his obsession with silence was threatening to rip away the one thing that still made sense in my life, my time with my son. I could practically hear Jessica's smug tone in my head, even though it was just text on a screen. She'd been looking for any angle, any little thing, since the divorce was finalized, to limit my weekends, to chip away at our Tuesday dinners. And now she had it. Handed to her on a silver platter by a man who complains if a leaf falls too loudly. I leaned against the kitchen counter, the cool granite doing nothing to settle the heat radiating from my chest. This couldn't be happening. Not because of some noise complaint. It wasn't even about actual noise, not really, not the kind that warrants legal action. It was about principle, mister. Henderson had screeched at me more than once. His principle. And now my son was paying the price. I remember thinking, when this all first started a few months back, that it was just a neighbor dispute. Annoying, sure, but fixable. I'd never imagined it would escalate to this, to lawyers and court papers, and the very real threat of losing my precious every other weekend with Leo. It was almost comical, if it wasn't so devastating. One old man's petty grievances, amplified by Jessica's relentless pursuit of advantage, twisting into something that could permanently alter my relationship with my boy. I'm David, by the way. 37, divorced, trying to build a decent life in a small rental house in a quiet suburban cul-de-sac. Or what I thought was quiet. My biggest worry used to be whether Leo would finish his broccoli or if I'd remember to pay the electric bill on time. Now it's about proving I'm a fit parent. That a kid laughing in his own backyard isn't a disturbance. That I haven't created an unstable environment. It felt like the world was spinning out. Everything I'd worked to keep steady since the divorce, just dissolving into chaos. Leo, he's my anchor. He's the reason I get up in the morning, the reason I push through the lonely nights. And the thought of someone, anyone, taking that away. It made me feel like I was going to throw up. There had to be a way out of this. There just had to be. But looking at that email, at those cold legal words, I honestly couldn't see one. Not right then. It was just a black hole of dread. This whole mess with the lawyer's email, the disturbances, it really started about 1.5 years ago. No, scratch that. It started way before with Jessica and me, I guess. We met at a friend's barbecue back in, must have been 2011, Memorial Day weekend. She was with a mutual friend, Brenda, and I remember Brenda saying, "This is Jessica, she just moved back to town." She had this laugh that just cut through everything. Loud, but not obnoxious, just full of life. She was a couple years younger than me, 25 then, working as a marketing assistant, totally driven. I was 27, trying to make a go of it as a freelance graphic designer, and honestly, a bit adrift. We hit it off pretty fast. Dates at the old drive-in cinema outside of town. Long walks along the riverfront in downtown Sterling. Just talking for hours. She was vibrant, passionate about everything. Her work, her family, her dreams. I was drawn to that energy, that certainty she seemed to have, which I definitely lacked. Within 1 year, we were living together in a small apartment above a bakery. It smelled amazing, like cinnamon and yeast all the time. We got married 3 years later, a small ceremony at the Arboretum. Nothing fancy. Leo was born 2 years after that, in 2017. He was, still is, the best thing that ever happened to me. Our life before things started to fray. It was normal, comfortably routine, I'd say. I'd be up early, usually by 6:30 a.m., to get some design work done before Leo woke up. Jessica, she worked a more standard 9 to 5, but she was a night owl, so I often handled the morning rush with Leo. Get him fed, dressed, ready for daycare. Then I'd work until 3 p.m., pick him up, and we'd usually hit the park or just hang out in the backyard, him kicking a soccer ball, me trying to keep up. When Jessica got home, we'd have dinner, baths, bedtime stories. Weekends were for family stuff, trips to the science museum, visiting my parents, sometimes just a lazy Saturday morning with pancakes. It was good. It felt stable. Looking back, there were signs, I guess. Little things I chalked up to stress or just how she was. Jessica was always incredibly organized, meticulously so. Everything had its place. My more relaxed approach to, well, most things often clashed with that. If I left my keys on the counter instead of the hook by the door, it was a minor issue. If Leo left his toys out overnight in the living room, it was a major transgression. She'd get this tight-lipped look, a vein would pulse in her temple, and she'd meticulously put everything away herself, often with a pointed sigh. I'd try to be better for her, for the peace, but I'm just not wired that way. Another thing, she hated any kind of public scene. If Leo had a tantrum at the grocery store, which, he was a toddler, it happened, she'd get this intense embarrassment. Not anger at him, but this almost palpable mortification. She'd yank him out of the store so fast, then lecture him in the car, sometimes for 20 minutes, about appropriate behavior. I remember thinking it was a bit much, but then I'd tell myself, she just wants him to be well-behaved. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe I should have paid more attention to how much her image mattered to her. Even then, how much she cared about what other people thought, even strangers. When we eventually separated, it wasn't some big explosive fight. It was a slow fade, a gradual pulling apart. We just stopped seeing eye to eye on things. On money, on how to parent, on how we spent our free time. The last 6 months before I moved out, it felt like we were roommates sharing a kid. The final straw was after a particularly bad argument about household chores. She just looked at me, completely devoid of emotion, and said, "David, I don't think we make each other happy anymore." I knew she was right, but it still hit like a ton of bricks. We finalized the divorce in early 2022. I found a small house for rent, a 2-bedroom on Willow Creek Lane near Leo's school. It felt like a fresh start, even if my heart was in pieces. I tried. I really did. I just never thought a fresh start could lead to this. And honestly, the biggest mistake I made was probably underestimating Jessica's drive to control every single aspect of her life, and by extension, mine and Leo's, even after we weren't a couple anymore. That, and moving next door to Mr. Henderson. Okay, so this whole thing with the disturbances started ramping up a couple months after I moved into the new place. It was late spring, early summer last year. I just planted some tomatoes in the small backyard patch, trying to get into this whole single dad homeowner vibe. Leo was over for the weekend, and it was a perfect Saturday. He was playing with his remote control monster truck on the patio, making monster truck noises, giggling like crazy. I was out there with him, watering the tomatoes. He wasn't being particularly loud, just a kid. Then, the back door of the house next door, Mr. Henderson's house creaked open. He was probably in his late 60s, maybe early 70s, always wore pressed shirts, and had this perpetually sour expression. He stepped out, squinting in the sun, and just stood there, arms crossed. "Everything all right, Mr. Henderson?" I called out, trying to be neighborly. He just stared at Leo's truck, then at Leo, then at me. "Is there a problem, David?" he said, his voice clipped, almost a hiss. "This noise. It's quite something. Some of us appreciate a little peace and quiet on a Saturday afternoon. I remember feeling a little flush, but I kept my voice even. Oh, Leo's just playing, sir. He's not being too loud, is he? Leo, sensing the shift, had already stopped his truck and was looking at us, eyes wide. Mr. Henderson sniffed. It's not about the volume, young man. It's about the incessant nature of it. The constant drone. I'm trying to read my newspaper. He gestured vaguely at a porch swing with a folded newspaper on it. Perhaps your son could play indoors? I just nodded, a little dumbfounded. Sure, Mr. Henderson. No problem. I ushered Leo inside, feeling a weird mix of annoyance and embarrassment. Leo, bless his heart, asked, Did I do something wrong, Daddy? And I just hugged him and said, No, buddy, absolutely not. Some people just like things very, very quiet. That was incident 1. Petty, but it set the tone. Things escalated pretty quickly after that. The next time it happened, maybe a week or 2 later, Leo and I were playing catch with a soft foam ball in the backyard. Just a few throws, nothing intense. Mr. Henderson was out there clipping his rose bushes, and every time the ball made a soft thwack into Leo's mitt, he'd visibly flinch. Eventually he stopped, dropped his clippers, and walked over to the fence looking utterly furious. Mr. Peterson, he began, practically spitting out my last name. I've had enough. This is a residential neighborhood, not a playground. My afternoon nap has been interrupted twice this week by your antics. I took a deep breath. Antics? We're just playing catch, Mr. Henderson. It's barely audible. He pointed a gnarled finger at me. I can hear it! And it's disruptive. My property values are affected by this kind of unruly behavior. I'm going to have to report you to the HOA if this continues. I remember thinking, HOA? This isn't even an HOA community. He was just bluffing, trying to scare me. There's no HOA here, Mr. Henderson, I said calmly. He just glared, muttered something about lack of respect, and stomped back to his roses. Leo, again, had shrunk into himself, his face clouded. It was heartbreaking to see my kid just being a kid, being made to feel like he was doing something wrong. That was incident 2. That's when the worry started to creep in, the feeling that this wasn't just a grumpy old man, but something more. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just an old guy. Probably lonely, maybe a bit senile, but the incidents kept coming. One time it was Leo laughing too loudly while watching cartoons, the sound drifting through an open window. Another time it was me playing my acoustic guitar for Leo on the back porch. Just some simple chords, not loud at all. Each time, Mr. Henderson would either come out and glare or more often send me a text message. He'd gotten my number from the welcome packet the landlord left when I moved in, I guess. His texts were always formal, passive-aggressive, talking about civility and the sanctity of one's home. I called my buddy, Owen, who's always been my sounding board. He's a software engineer, pretty level-headed. Dude, this Henderson guy is a nightmare, I told him, pacing my living room. He just sent me a text because Leo was giggling while watching Paw Patrol. Owen actually laughed. No way! Seriously? Sounds like a real piece of work. Just ignore him, man. Kids make noise. It's what they do. I wanted to believe that, but a part of me was already getting stressed. Yeah, but it's making Leo self-conscious. Every time he wants to go outside, he asks, Is Mr. Henderson home, Daddy? It's messed up. Then came incident 3, the one that really spiraled. It was Leo's 7th birthday party. Not a huge bash, just a few of his friends from school. Liam, Maya, Chloe, and their parents. My parents came too, and Owen. We had a bouncy castle rented for the backyard, a small one, and I'd actually called Mr. Henderson the week before left a voicemail, apologizing in advance for the noise, and offering him a slice of cake. I figured if I was proactive, he couldn't complain. Big mistake, apparently. The party was in full swing, kids shrieking with laughter inside the bouncy castle, parents chatting. It was glorious chaos. My mom, Janet, was helping me grill hot dogs. Suddenly, the bouncy castle deflated. Not slowly, like it lost power, but like someone had yanked the plug. All the kids tumbled out, confused and a little scared. My heart just stopped. I ran over, looked at the power cord, and sure enough, it had been unplugged from the outdoor outlet. And there, sticking out from under Mr. Henderson's fence, was a small, gnarled branch, perfectly positioned to have hooked the cord and pulled it out. It was too precise to be accidental. My dad, Robert, who's usually pretty laid back, saw it too. He went over to the fence, his face red. "Henderson! What the hell?" he shouted. Mr. Henderson's back door opened. He stepped out, holding a pair of gardening shears, looking entirely too smug. "Oh, was there a problem, Robert?" "Just trimming a few unruly branches. They were encroaching on my property. My apologies if it caused a minor inconvenience." My mom grabbed my arm. "David, don't. Not today. Not with the kids here." I wanted to scream. I wanted to march over there and confront him, but I saw Leo's face, pale and upset, and I knew I couldn't lose it. I just looked at Mr. Henderson, whose eyes held this cold, triumphant gleam, and I plugged the bouncy castle back in. The party continued, but the joy was muted. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. After everyone left, my parents stayed behind. "David, you can't let this man push you around," my dad said, shaking his head. "This is harassment." My mom was more practical. "You need to document everything, honey. Every text, every incident. He's clearly trying to make your life miserable." I thought about it, but I just wanted it to stop. I wanted to believe that if I just kept quiet, kept my head down, he'd eventually get bored and move on. I was so wrong. I started keeping Leo indoors more. Or we'd go to the park or a friend's house just to avoid any potential conflict. I was always on edge, listening for any sound from his house, constantly monitoring Leo's volume. It started affecting me, too. I was short with clients, losing sleep. I was trying to be a good dad, a good neighbor, and it felt like I was failing at both. And all the while, I was rationalizing, telling myself, "It'll blow over. He's just a lonely old man. Don't engage." That was my biggest mistake, my absolute biggest mistake. Because while I was trying to avoid conflict, Jessica was apparently taking notes. She'd call me, seemingly out of the blue, asking about how things were settling in at the new place. Innocent questions, I thought. Now I see it for what it was. She was gathering ammunition, and I, like an idiot, was too focused on the immediate threat next door to see the bigger storm brewing. I was blind, absolutely blind to what she was doing, because why would she? Why would she use my neighbor's petty grievances against me, especially when it involved our son? That question just haunted me. The email from Jessica's lawyer, the one I opened in part 1, that was the catalyst. It was a Tuesday, a little after 5 p.m. I just picked Leo up from after-school care, and he was in the living room, completely engrossed in building some elaborate Lego spaceship. I had made us some simple quesadillas, which were cooling on the counter, and the smell of melted cheese was usually comforting, but not that day. Not with that email staring me down. Regarding the amended parenting plan and your documented disturbances, the phrase echoed in my head, cold and precise. Documented? What did that even mean? Mr. Henderson's texts? His glares? I knew he was a problem, but documented? It felt like there was something more, something insidious I was missing. My heart was pounding, a heavy, dull thump against my ribs. My hands were shaking so bad, I had to put the phone down on the counter. My palms were sweaty, and I felt this sudden wave of nausea wash over me. This was it. This was the moment I realized the neighbor thing wasn't just a nuisance. It was a weapon. My first thought was, Jessica, she must be behind this. But how? How could she weaponize a neighbor? I mean, she was always meticulous, always planning. But this felt low, even for her. She hadn't been actively hostile since the divorce, just attached. I remembered her innocent phone calls, asking about the new place, how I was settling in. I'd even told her about Mr. Henderson, joking about how intense he was about noise. I remember her saying something like, "Oh, really? That sounds challenging." And I, idiot that I was, just thought she was offering sympathy. Sympathy? I picked up the phone again, my thumb hovering over Jessica's contact. I needed to call her, confront her. But what would I even say? Are you colluding with my grumpy neighbor to take my kid away? It sounded insane. Instead, I scrolled down the lawyer's email, looking for details. There it was, in the third paragraph. Exhibit A, correspondence logs between Mr. Arthur Henderson and Miss Jessica Peterson, detailing various complaints regarding noise levels and disruptions originating from the property at 1422 Willow Creek Lane. Correspondence logs. My stomach plummeted to my feet. Not just text to me, but correspondence with Jessica. This wasn't just a neighbor complaining to me. This was Mr. Henderson actively providing information to my ex-wife. My blood ran cold. The buzzing of Leo's Lego pieces as he searched for a specific block was suddenly deafening. My whole world felt like it had tilted sideways. I had to confront her. Not by phone, in person. I needed to see her face. My mind was racing, trying to put the pieces together. The way Mr. Henderson always seemed to be watching. The timing of his complaints often aligning with Leo being especially happy, bouncy. The bouncy castle incident. It all clicked into place, not as random acts of curmudgeonly annoyance, but as deliberate, calculated moves. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to calm myself. "Hey, buddy," I said to Leo, trying to keep my voice steady. "Daddy's got to step out for a little bit, okay? Just for a quick errand. You can finish your spaceship, then we'll have quesadillas, all right?" He barely registered me, immersed in his plastic world. "Okay, Dad," he mumbled. I grabbed my keys, the metal cold in my hot hand, and practically ran to my car. It was almost 5:30 p.m. Jessica usually got home from work around 5:45 p.m. I knew the route to her place blindfolded, a 15-minute drive across town to the perfectly manicured, quiet cul-de-sac she lived in now. The streets were already getting busy with rush hour traffic, the low hum of engines and distant sirens just fading into a background drone. I barely noticed. My focus was a laser beam on one thing: getting to Jessica. When I pulled up to her house, her car was already in the driveway. A sleek silver sedan that screamed, "Responsible adult." The lawn was immaculate, the rose bushes perfectly trimmed. Her house, her whole life, projected this image of pristine order. I got out of my car, my legs feeling strangely heavy, almost numb. The porch light was on, casting a soft glow on the freshly painted front door. I rang the doorbell, my heart hammering. She opened the door, a small smile on her face, probably expecting a package or something. Then she saw me, and her smile faltered, replaced by that cool, guarded expression I knew so well. "David? What's wrong?" Her voice was even, but I could hear a slight tension underneath. "What's wrong?" I repeated, my voice hoarse, louder than I intended. A neighbor across the street, watering his petunias, looked up briefly. I lowered my voice, but the intensity remained. "I just got an email from your lawyer, Jessica. Correspondence logs between Mr. Arthur Henderson and Miss Jessica Peterson." "What is that?" Her face went completely blank for a second. A mask. Then she recovered, a slight shrug. "Oh, that. Well, Mr. Henderson reached out to me, David. He was concerned about the environment your son was in, the constant disturbances. As his mother, I have a right to be informed." She said it so calmly, so matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather. "Concerned?" I gripped the doorframe, my knuckles white. "He's complaining about a kid playing. He unplugged Leo's bouncy castle on his birthday. And you used it. You're using a crazy neighbor's petty complaints to try and take my son away from me." The words tumbled out, raw and accusatory. She recoiled slightly. "It's not about taking Leo away, David. It's about ensuring he has a stable, peaceful environment. Your current living situation, with the constant friction with your neighbor, it's not ideal. It's not fair to Leo." "It's not fair to Leo," my voice broke. "You think this is fair to Leo? To use this ridiculousness to hurt me, to hurt us, to reduce my time with him?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing, the sheer calculating nature of it. The wind chimes on her porch tinkled softly, a sickeningly peaceful sound. "I'm just looking out for Leo's best interests," she said, her eyes now steely, cold. "And a place where he can't even play freely in his own backyard because of an angry neighbor. That's not his best interests, is it? Mr. Henderson painted a very clear picture of your inability to manage the situation. Inability to manage. That hit hard. It was true, I hadn't managed Mr. Henderson. I'd tried to ignore him. I'd tried to be nice. I tried to avoid conflict. And now it was being used against me, twisted into a narrative of parental incompetence. I felt this crushing weight of self-reproach. Why hadn't I fought back harder? Why hadn't I seen this coming? The answer, I knew, was that I hadn't wanted to believe my ex-wife would go to such lengths. I had given her the benefit of the doubt, and she had exploited it fully. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. The taste of betrayal, bitter and metallic, filled my mouth. I just stood there, speechless for a moment. The hum of her refrigerator from inside the house, the chirping of crickets starting up, all fading into an unbearable silence. This was it. This was war. And I had been entirely unprepared. Walking away from Jessica's door that evening, I felt like I was moving through thick mud. The anger was still there, hot and simmering, but it was quickly being replaced by a paralyzing fear. This wasn't just a threat anymore, it was real. Jessica was moving to amend the parenting plan, and she had leverage. Leverage handed to her by my next-door neighbor. The entire drive home, all I could think about was Leo, his small hand in mine, his innocent laughter. What if I lost that? What if my own blindness, my inability to deal with Mr. Henderson, actually cost me time with my son? The practical problems hit immediately. First, I needed a lawyer. My divorce lawyer, Christine, was a family friend, but her hourly rate was steep. I'd drained most of my savings for the initial divorce and the deposit on the rental house. Now, facing a custody battle, it felt like staring at a mountain I couldn't climb. I called Christine the next morning, her voice calm and reassuring, but the numbers she quoted for a contested motion made my head spin. I started looking at every line item in my budget, wondering where I could cut back. Groceries, subscriptions, even my modest work-from-home office supplies. Everything was on the chopping block. Work became a struggle. My freelance design projects required focus, creativity, but my brain was just a swirling vortex of legal terms. Best interests of the child, unstable environment, parental fitness. I'd stare at my screen for hours, unable to concentrate. Deadlines started to slip. I had to confess to a couple of my regular clients that I was dealing with a personal emergency, something I hated doing. The financial strain, combined with the stress, was crushing. Socially, it was weird. I told Owen everything that night. He was livid. She's such a snake, Dave. How could she do this? He offered to come over, just hang out, but I felt too agitated, too raw. My parents, after I broke the news, were supportive, but also clearly worried sick. My mom started calling every day, asking if I'd eaten, if I'd slept. My dad kept muttering about getting that old man. It was comforting, but also added to the weight, knowing I was dragging them through this too. I tried to talk to Mr. Henderson again, a last-ditch effort. I walked over to his house the next day, right after Leo went to school. I knocked on his door. He opened it, looking utterly unfazed, almost triumphant. "Good morning, David," he said, not a hint of warmth. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Mr. Henderson," I started, trying to keep my voice even. "I know you've been talking to my ex-wife. I know you've been sending her correspondence logs. You know this could affect my time with Leo, right?" "My son? The kid who lives next door?" He just stared at me, his eyes cold and unblinking. I simply reported what I observed. As a concerned citizen, and as a victim of ongoing noise pollution. It's not my fault if the observations paint a less than ideal picture of your domestic situation, is it? He smiled then, a small, tight, venomous smile. "Perhaps you should reflect on why your ex-wife finds my testimony so compelling." He closed the door, slowly, deliberately, leaving me standing there, feeling like a complete fool. The rage that surged through me then was primal. I wanted to smash something. I wanted to scream until my throat was raw. But all I could do was clench my fists and walk back to my silent house. This man, this petty, vindictive man, was actively working to harm me, to harm my child's relationship with me, and he felt completely justified. The attempt at recovery at first was just damage control. I started logging every single interaction with Mr. Henderson, every text, every time Leo played outside. I bought a small, cheap security camera for the backyard, pointed at the fence line just in case. I felt like I was living under surveillance, constantly on guard. It exhausted me. Then, a new revelation hit me, one that made everything even darker. I was talking to Christine, my lawyer, about Mr. Henderson. She asked if I'd ever seen him interacting with Jessica directly. I said no, just the correspondence logs. But then she asked, "Do you recall any other unusual behavior from him? Anything that might suggest more than just a cranky neighbor?" And then I remembered it. The last few months before I moved out, when Jessica and I were barely speaking. Sometimes, when I'd come home from picking up Leo, I'd see Mr. Henderson's car parked 2 or 3 blocks down from our old house. I hadn't thought anything of it at the time, just assumed he was visiting someone or maybe going for a walk. But now, it clicked. He lived on Willow Creek Lane. What was he doing on the other side of town, near my old place, during those specific months? He wasn't just a random neighbor recruited by Jessica. He was involved. Had he known her before? Was he doing her favors, even before I moved in next to him? The thought sent a chill down my spine. It felt like a much deeper, more calculated conspiracy than I had first imagined. And that's when the true chaos really began to sink in. So here I am. It's been about 3 weeks since that email, and the legal stuff is grinding along. Slow, expensive, emotionally draining. I've gone through discovery, provided Christine with all my logs of Mr. Henderson's complaints, the security camera footage. The amended parenting plan is still on the table. Still threatening to cut down my time with Leo. But Christine seems cautiously optimistic that we have a strong case. It's not over, not by a long shot. Financially, I'm scraping by. My design work is picking up, thankfully, as I force myself to refocus. But every extra dollar goes straight to the legal fund. I've started bringing my lunch to work every day, cutting out almost all non-essentials. Housing-wise, I'm still in the rental on Willow Creek Lane. Moving isn't really an option right now, not with the legal fees. And honestly, I don't want to give Jessica the satisfaction of running me out. Besides, Leo loves his room here. What have I learned? God, so much. I learned that ignoring problems doesn't make them go away. It just gives them time to fester and get weaponized. My passive approach with Mr. Henderson, my desperate desire to avoid confrontation, backfired spectacularly. I also learned that some people, even people you once loved, can be capable of a level of cold calculation that's truly shocking. I never thought Jessica would put her own desire for control above Leo's happiness, above his relationship with me. That stings. It really, really stings. This whole thing has definitely changed how I approach relationships. I'm a lot warier now, I think, more guarded. It's hard to trust, even in small ways, when you've been blindsided like this. I'm trying not to let it make me cynical, but it's a struggle. For Leo's sake, I know I need to be better, be stronger, be more assertive. He deserves a dad who will fight for him, not one who gets pushed around by a grumpy neighbor. I'm also more connected to my parents and Owen than ever. They've been amazing, a true lifeline, and I'm so grateful for that. I still have so many questions. What was Mr. Henderson doing near my old house all those months ago? How did he and Jessica connect, really? Was she actively soliciting his complaints? Or did he genuinely just reach out to her on his own, sensing an opportunity? Did he know how serious this could get? And honestly, what kind of person does that to a child's relationship with their parent? These questions just hang in the air, unanswered. I appreciate you all listening to this, getting it all out. It helps just to type it out to put some order to the chaos in my head. Like, I guess I'm hoping someone out there has faced something similar, maybe has some perspective or just understands, because sometimes it feels like I'm navigating this totally alone. It's a fight, a hard one, but I'm going to see it through. For Leo, that's the only thing that matters now.